Welcome to Autosport's home for the next week and the Spanish Grand Prix. We're a few miles away from the circuit and we're looking forward to what should be a fascinating weekend. I'm joined by Jake Boxall-Legge and we're going to talk a little bit about Ferrari. We've had news that they've brought forward their engine upgrade, so going very aggressive. Normally it would be Canada in 2 races' time, but they've brought it to Spain. So what do you make of that, Jake?
Well, it just suggests that they're really pushing on. They've had a very difficult opening 4 races. They need something to turn the tide. We know that they've got a very good engine as it is, but they just want to push that advantage out in the engine department out a little bit more. Mercedes is probably going to get closer at some point, so Ferrari's just trying to extend that advantage, and then when it comes to its own car, it can sort of then try to get the gains that way.
Well, it's interesting because if you look last year at the performance profile comparing the Mercedes and Ferrari progressions, it was the engine upgrades that gave the big gains. So this is quite a big thing from Ferrari. It could give them a few race weekends. I mean, engine power and performance, assuming it is for power at Monaco, isn't such a big thing. They might well use the old engine there, I guess, if there's not a massive advantage for that kind of track. But around a circuit like Barcelona, it could be worth quite a lot. So Mercedes need to be concerned because we know Ferrari already has an engine advantage, and they could have taken a further step forward.
Definitely, and it's like turned the tide from the last couple of years as well, because we've been talking for years about how good Mercedes' power unit is, and now Ferrari's got the upper hand. And to try and cover off any more threat from Mercedes, then they're just going to go for a little bit more of an update. Around Barcelona, it will have some bearing on the last straight. It's not too much of a concern elsewhere. Obviously, traction is quite a big part of the Catalan circuit. Power is vital when coming out of the corners, but and then, as you say, for tracks like Monaco, it's not going to be as worthwhile as such. So they might take an old engine for that one. But there's going to be some races coming up where engine power is going to be really, really key. Baku would have been that, but obviously that update hasn't materialised until now. So Ferrari's really trying to push that envelope a little bit more.
And it'd be interesting to see what the all-round performance gain is from the Ferrari engine, because it's not just necessarily power, there's drivability, all of these factors that play into it. And of course, Shell have bringing in new lubricant apparently, so that should work hand in glove with the engine upgrade. Yeah,
definitely. And when teams bring in lubricants, what we mean by that is the engine oils that are used through the engine to ensure that everything is lubricated, ensure that everything is relatively as frictionless as it can possibly be. That's just being pushed further and further and further because they've realised they can eke out a few extra horsepower just by ensuring that the engine is as efficient as possible. It's not losing energy to those frictional losses inside the engine itself. So there's a lot of gains to be made that way. It's something that perhaps in recent years had been overlooked until the last few years, where this sort of like oil war has really come to the fore. So yeah, there's definitely sort of the devil's in the detail, really, especially when it comes to these highly complex powertrains. So yeah, they're just looking for every little bit of advantage they can get.
And of course, we're back at Barcelona, the scene of what was a very strong pre-season testing performance from Ferrari. That's been backed up by very little in the first 4 races, as Mercedes has taken 4-1-2 finishes. But Ferrari have talked about problems getting the tyres working, and I think that has been a very, very significant factor. We've seen a few flashes of performance. Obviously, Bahrain, Ferrari was the dominant force, but they couldn't get both cars to the end of the race without problems. Vettel spinning, and then Leclerc having his control electronics problem that cost him victory. So what are you expecting to see here, Jake? Do you think this will be a good kind of reset point for Ferrari? Because clearly they could get the tyres working in low temperatures here pre-season.
It's up to Ferrari. It's in their hands, really. I think they could have potentially won in Baku if Leclerc hadn't binned it into the wall, and if they hadn't gone for this weird medium tyre strategy to start the race on. I think if he'd started on softs, he might have had a much better chance of doing it, and Vettel didn't really do much in that race particularly. Here, it's not going to be like a complete reset. It's just, I think it's going to be a chance for them to take stock of the circuit. They'll be able to compare with what they had in testing and what they had now, and if things look good, then maybe we'll see their first race win of the season. But if they're as behind the 8 ball as they've been in the last 4 races, then they've got more problems to solve. So It's going to be interesting to see. I think it's not do or die just yet, but they need a result here, definitely.
Well, Baku was another example of a race where they were close. Vettel was on the more orthodox strategy there, and there were points where he was kind of edging up on the Mercedes drivers. So there are times when the pace seemed to be there if they can get the tyres working. But the other thing we'll see from Ferrari this weekend, and all teams in fact, is we'll see some car updates. Do you have a bit of an inkling for what we might see in terms of the aero package of the Ferrari?
The Ferrari, I hear that they're bringing a new front and rear wings. That's sort of par for the course, really. That's Red Bull are going to bring front and rear wings that are brand new to the circuit. We expect Ferrari to have something similar. They need to do a little bit more upgrade work to the aerodynamics, because there's been one or two tangible upgrades since the season began, and it's clear that when it comes to generating the downforce and getting the tyres working, they're losing out. So something needs to happen on that side. In the rest of the field, we expect some really big updates up and down the grid. Racing Point, for example, we expect something really big from them. Lawrence Stroll said that it looks good, so we wait and see. That team, especially when it Force India guys, was able to do that quite well. Maybe the car wasn't particularly good at the start of the season, but they're able to keep updating, and eventually the car would come good. So, the pressure's on them to do that again. We'll see more upgrades. Williams will have something, and everybody else in the midfield will have something else as well, because they don't want to get caught short and end up falling down the field. If you stay still in Formula One, you often go backwards. So this is going to be a very, very key race for a lot of people. So expect to see a lot of upgrade packages.
And of course, Mercedes will also bring some parts. We can be sure of that. Every team will bring stuff to Spain for the start of the European season, as is traditional. So Jake, if Mercedes bring new parts and they stay ahead of Ferrari and they get another 1-2 this weekend, it almost feels like season over in a way. There's still a long way to go, so it's not. But that's why this is such a big weekend for both Mercedes and for Ferrari.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is the first race of the European season. This is sort of... it's closer to home for everybody. Everybody's got their trucks, everybody's got their motorhomes. It's sort of the most familiar race for everybody, and they're going to start to get into a pattern now of races every couple of weeks or so. This is when the sort of momentum starts to build, so they need to get a good start now, really. The first 4 races, they're sometimes a bit of an anomaly because they're all flyaways, very different tracks, so teams have very different characteristics on the circuit and can do different things. But here, this is the sort of the start of what we can see the regular season building into, and yeah, as you say, both of them need to kick on, really.
Well, they always say, the teams, the first 4 races, a strange selection of circuits is when you get to Barcelona that you really see how things stand, and that's why this weekend is going to be absolutely crucial in the battle for the 2019 Formula One World Championship.